Hello, welcome back to the Coric Restoration YouTube series. I hope you're enjoying the series. I'm down for the first time in about a fortnight at Hamble Point Marina on what is a fairly wet and cold day, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's changed in the last couple of days, and we start to get ground rush towards the finish. So I'm in the varnishing shed, which is lovely and warm, it has to be said, on this slightly damp day. I've been asked a couple of questions, either directly or indirectly, about the cabin decking, and it is this material here, and if you can see that, it is a form of ply, and it has formica on the back and on the front, and this is a pretty standard flooring these days, certainly better than things like Treadmaster and so forth, which wear pretty quickly. On other parts of the sole, we couldn't put this on because it's too flat, so what we've had to do is put a thin layer of ply and then put a coating of formica on the top, and the thin layer of ply flexes to the shape of the boat, and then the formica flexes on top of that. But obviously it's in the bottom of the boat, it's likely to get wet, and what we're going to do is these edges here all need to be lacquered in order to make them waterproof, so that there's no ingress of water or swelling that goes on there. So we've got a lacquer that we're going to put on, a couple of coats go on today, then I give it a little bit of a sand down and take it from there. So we'll be putting a couple of coats of this water-based lacquer on. This is a water-based lacquer, very much not like the stuff we're using on the woodwork that's on show inside the cabin. As I said, a couple of coats of this, sand down, a couple more coats early next week. Well, I'm back home now, and I hope the sound of the rain doesn't impact the noise levels on this bit of video. I'm remembering back to just before Christmas when somebody made a comment that said, oh, you've decided to replace the gas cooker, that's a surprise, because in an earlier video I indicated that we were going to be able to refurbish it. Well, we invited an expert that James knows to come down and have a look, and he had a look and he said actually the cost to refurbish was very nearly as high as the cost of a new cooker, and that made that decision pretty straightforward, and I'm sorry that I didn't cover it at the time, but it made me think that it might be worth recapping the diesel decision, because that is another one where it wasn't quite as straightforward, and there were more options, and it was very much more expensive, and I thought I might just go through the decision-making process that I did. It was more complicated, as I say, than the diesel, but the principles were much the same. So just to recap, back in July we had an old diesel engine sitting in front of the boat. We managed to hook it up to a rig ashore and ran it, but it leaked in lots of places. A lot of the hoses were in poor order or damaged. The gas cooker looked better at that time, but for the diesel it looked a bit marginal. So we got a quote to do the bare minimum, or to do a decent job, or to replace it, and of course it would have been madness not to have thought about electrics at the time. What I did was write down all of the things that I thought were important in that decision. What were the factors that were going to drive the decision, and what were the options that were available to me? And then I put a percentage of how important that factor was to me. The next thing I did was I went and scored what I thought was going to be the most likely solution. This is really just to give you a benchmark. And the numbers are completely relative. They don't have to be hard numbers like money. In this particular case, what we're doing is we're scoring it in a low scoring system. So the better we felt that solution was for that factor, the lower it scored. What you then do, having done the first one, is quickly add in the other numbers and then finally multiply the score that you've got by the percentage and then sum the column for the option. And a tiny bit of conditional formatting at the very end, your answer looks really, really clear. Key thing here is that you go back to your factors and your priorities if the answer doesn't feel right, and ask yourself, are you being honest with yourself about your view of the priority of that, or have you got the things right? If it's very small factors, I wouldn't wind them in. But what it does do is it allows you to put on one piece of paper the range of options that you're faced with, the things that you think are important, and take a view of it. If the answer still doesn't feel right, then it's likely to be an emotional decision, and that's just as okay too, but it's worth knowing that that's the case. I've been quietly varnishing a flagpole, and that's taking shape, but it's just a tiny bit too narrow for the base of the flagpole. So what we're going to do is we've found an old skin fitting. We're going to turn that on a lathe and then fit it to the very bottom of the flagpole in order to give us a fitting that won't swell up when it's terribly wet and won't get all loose through wear and tear. So I'm looking forward to spending a bit of time doing that. Height. Somebody was talking about lowering the deck very slightly because they were quite tall. So I measured it up for us in this boat. It is 5 feet 8 in the galley area and 5 feet 8 right at the very front of the saloon, and a couple more inches towards the back end, which is fine for me because I'm 5'7", but it is a notoriously small boat, shall we say. Other things that I've been asked, I was asked about the fuel tank. Here's a picture of it. It is 33 litres. It is a removable fuel tank, and that is very much by design. I'm very keen to be able to take this out if I need to, if you get any bugs or anything like that in it, and clean it. And if I need to do longer distance or I need more fuel, then I'll put in a temporary system into there. I was asked about the make of the calorifier. This is from a company called ATI, and we sourced it through a company called Penguin Engineering, and they do lots of things for boats. James likes them and gets a lot of stuff from them, which is fine. Something else that happened was I was doing some work trying to tidy up some woodwork above the companionway hatch, and as I looked in the very narrow gap, I saw a piece of paper that I fished out, and this piece of paper is from 1991, which is pretty amazing. And the name on it, it's an invoice. The name on it is for somebody that I thought was the owner at the time, although the initial is different, which is interesting. But I'm going to go back to a couple of local suppliers there and say, did this person buy these things at this time? Was the name of the boat that they were dealing with this name, as a part of trying to find out a little bit more about the history. Very much looking forward to next week. In the ideal world, a lot of the gear will arrive to be fitted to the deck, and we're going to start to move on to fitting the light fittings on the interior. So lots to look forward to there. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you're enjoying these as much as I'm enjoying making them, and do let me know if there is anything you'd like me to cover in more depth. Thanks very much. Bye.